Whenever you remake a work of the past, there's a risk you'll make it worse. Of course, there's also a chance that you'll make it better, but changing something is generally considered by its fans to be the worst thing you can do, because we always think they're gonna ruin it. This director's cut of Broken Sword, one of my favourite games from my teenage years, falls into both categories. A lot of changes have been made, and while some are good, others are not. Broken Sword tells the story of George Stobart, inquisitive American tourist, and Nico Collard, mercenary French reporter, who each get swept up in a plot that begins with an assassination, but grows into a sprawling epic about the history of the Knights Templar and a modern plot by a cult of Neo-Templars. I won't go much into the story, but starting in Paris, it sees George travelling all over Europe, unravelling mysteries in a fascinating detective thriller that builds at a fine pace from an interesting foundation, and grows over the course of the game into something far more interesting than just a few murders. It actually shares more than a few similarities with the Da Vinci Code, except it came out 8 years earlier, and is actually good.
So the end. An end wrought by our enemies began our darkness.
Well, more or less. So it's definitely one of the more story-driven adventure games out there, and that's what makes one of the biggest changes in this director's cut so interesting. The story has been revamped, and new to this director's cut is a 2 hours long B story featuring Nico Collard as a playable character, and her story doesn't just intersect the main story, it opens the game. The game used to start with an explosion at a cafe that was a perfect introduction to a fascinating mystery. Now the story starts the day before that explosion in a much less interesting, much less provocative, much less compelling way, nestling the thrilling former start about an hour into the game. This change does have an upside in as much as it fleshes out Nico's part in the story and explains why she's so involved, as her motive in the original was utterly mercenary, which helped make her quite unlikable. This increased focus on her isn't entirely beneficial, however, as even with a motive, she just isn't a very likeable character. George, on the other hand, is extremely charismatic, and I've always considered him to be one of gaming's greatest male characters, which is in equal parts thanks to the fantastic writing and Rolf Saxon's wonderful voice work. Some of the dialogue does, however, seem to have been fiddled with for the director's cut, sometimes for the worse, but much of the new dialogue is on par with the original, and the game of course still spots most of the fantastic dialogue of the original.
Freeze! Hold it, right there.
Oh, don't shoot. I'm innocent. I'm an American.
Can't make up your mind, huh?
I demand to see the American consul.
Drop your weapons and get...
It's not a comedy, but the jokes often come thick and fast and are genuinely funny, and serve as a great counterpoint to the serious tone while also not feeling out of place. Very few serious games use humour well, but Broken Sword is definitely one of them. One of the more interesting aspects of the writing is that we're regularly privy to George's inner monologue, which we often get even during conversations, making him as much narrator as star of the game. I've always enjoyed that kind of writing, and it's very well used here to give us a look at the crazy goings-on inside George's mind.
The armor was about my size. I had a mental vision of putting it on and clanking off to see the Countess, with the gardener hanging hopelessly on the outside trying to stop me. Apart from being stupid and unworkable, it was a great plan.
A new change for these conversations is that there are now character portraits during dialogue. Although these are slightly animated, there's no lip syncing, but this gives the conversations a comic book feeling which fits well with the hand-drawn aesthetic. The way subtitles are used here is quite cool too, adopting the LucasArts style of having the subtitles appear by the character speaking. I have an annoying habit of reading subtitles even when I don't want to, but by placing them by character portraits, they're putting them in a place where you're already looking, which is pretty good design. That said, while the portraits and subtitles are a good change, it's extremely superficial and it's hard to argue that they make the game better in any meaningful way. Dialogue is all well and good, but it's obviously the puzzles that make a game like this. Both the original puzzles and the new ones added here are great overall. Most of the puzzles have a solid foundation in logic, and while trial and error is always going to be there for you to fall back on, just thinking about what you have to do will usually yield an answer, because there aren't any crazy obtuse solutions like those found in certain other adventure games. Longest Journey.
Hi? Excuse me?
Oui?
Look, a tissue stained with grease paint.
Ah, just what I've always wanted. If you give me that, you can enter through the door.
Really?
Of course not. What would I want with an old tissue?
That said, trial and error is no stranger to this genre, and there are definitely times when the logic of a puzzle is only apparent after it's been solved, and there's no real room for you to make that intuitive leap, reducing you to simply trying every possible combination of items until something works. But even in doing this, there is a very apparent rational logic to the puzzles that becomes clear afterwards, and the game never feels unfair. And even these moments are kept to a pretty good minimum, and overall the puzzles are very praiseworthy. Broken Sword used to be a very pixel-hunty game. You'd have to thoroughly scan the environments to find all the pick-upable, usable and look-atable objects, which was an utter chore. Now the objects are given glowing blue rings which makes them pop out, but as a sort of happy medium, to encourage some sense of exploring the environments, these rings only appear when your cursor is near them, so you still have to check out the environments, but you don't need to be pixel perfect. The range of these rings is a little too generous though, but it's a decent change that slightly improves on the flawed original. One change that's a little more hit and miss are the, as the game's marketing amusingly calls them, first-person puzzles. These are actually just Professor Layton style, or if you're a PC gamer, Puzzle Agent style puzzles, like solving a word search or, my favourite, decoding secret messages using a cipher. These puzzles vary in quality greatly, but overall they're a very worthwhile addition to the game, serving as a good contrast to the more common collect and combine puzzles, while also fitting in so well with the rest of the game that they feel like they've always been there. Of course, they had to go and ruin it all by adding a hint system. I feel like a broken record saying this yet again, but I just have to say it. I like hints in general, provided they aren't too generous and provided the player can't trigger them at will. If the player is in control of their hinting, the player will abuse it the instant they get stuck. This is terrible for a game all about puzzles. Summer Max 2 struck the perfect balance. The hints weren't too generous and they came automatically after so much time had passed. This means the player will be given a lot of help if they're stuck, but they won't ever be given the solution, which means there's still a sense of satisfaction for having completed the puzzle, and they're encouraged to try to solve it themselves before they turn to hints, as the game decides automatically when the player should receive a hint. In this Broken Sword Director's Cut, you can hint your way through the whole game, getting solutions to every puzzle at will. This is totally inexcusable, and it totally undermines the entire point of the gameplay. It's very possible to give hints judiciously for the good of the experience, but just throwing in a solve puzzle button is absurd. Obviously you can just choose to ignore it, as I do, but that doesn't make it immune to criticism. Including it in the game just undermines it, and no other genre willfully encourages players to skip content like the modern point-and-click adventure. It's a sickening spoon-feeding, and the worst thing about it is there are clear examples out there of how to give the player hints without going too far. And it's such a pity because so much of the rest of the game is so good. The artwork is utterly glorious, easily some of the best hand-drawn art you'll see in a game, and while it's showing its obvious age today, particularly in some of the animations which do look truly terrible at times, every single screen in the game is still a beautiful work of art. The music is fantastic too. It's a rousing orchestral score that fits the game so well, but it's also a pleasure to listen to on its own right. There are wonderful cues with iconic pieces introducing new areas and fantastic swelling music that plays along with a twinkly sound effect just as you solve that puzzle you've been stuck on for the last half an hour, which pushes the sense of satisfaction to an extreme high. The voice acting is superb overall, particularly from the protagonist, but there's a strange, empty, hollow feeling to the voices, as if it was recorded in a room poorly suited for recording, and you're going to notice that right away. Another issue is that some of the characters are pretty much caricatures, which most obviously comes through in the voice acting, especially the main villain, but it's not just limited to the major characters.
Hi, what's your name, sir?
Hello, you buy kebab. Most good.
What do you think of this?
Buy kebab? Come to the...
What do you make of this, sir?
You buy kebab. Yum, most good.
That larger-than-life style only gets worse as the Broken Sword series goes on, but right from the start there are characters that just make me sigh and roll my eyes. On the other hand, because the game is set all over the world, there's a fantastic range of nationality in the voice work, which I greatly appreciate, and I would love to see more games doing this. That said, there is a weirdly large number of English and American people in the game, and it pushes the limits of credibility. A couple of other changes I'll quickly touch on. It's now impossible to die. There were a few sequences where you could die Sierra style in the original, and these moments felt like a natural consequence of your actions if they came, but also served to reflect the tension in the story and highlight the risks George is taking, which only helped the game. Cutting these out was a big mistake, as it diminishes the tension greatly. Some of the harder general violence in the game has been edited out also, and in both cases it's been done only to reach a broader audience, and that's very rarely a motive that leads to better games. Another change, one I confess I can't discuss with any personal knowledge because I didn't find any, is that there are supposedly now alternate solutions to some puzzles. Multiple solutions to adventure game puzzles sound cool on paper, but they don't really provide replay value, which is presumably their main purpose, because you're going to have the original solution ingrained in your brain for the next decade, and it feels weird and wrong trying to figure out alternate solutions to a puzzle you already know how to solve. That's been my experience anyway, which is probably why I didn't find any alternate solutions. With the total absence of extras, including things like audio commentary, which is really a wasted opportunity to give fans of the original something cool, there's nothing worthwhile in the new content that makes this worthy of purchase for owners of the original. Still, despite some questionable changes, this is, at its core, a magnificent game. And if you haven't played the game before and have the willpower to resist the hint system, I see no real reason to not favour this version over the original. Broken Sword is one of the all-time point-and-click adventure greats, and I'd strongly recommend you pick up a copy, whichever you choose.